For thousands of years, deadly killers have been capable of wiping out large numbers of people, plants, and animals. These killers, invisible to the naked eye, have long been a mystery. What are these deadly creatures? They're tiny things called viruses and living organisms called Monerans. Not until recently in human history have these killers begun to be understood. As dangerous as they may be, though, these things have the potential to be very useful and important on Earth. In fact, life as we know it would not exist without them. During the next few minutes, we're going to explore some of the characteristics of both viruses and Monerans, while also taking a look at how they affect our lives. At some point in your life, you've probably had a cold or the flu, complete with headache, sore throat, sneezing, and body aches. Hopefully, you made an appointment to see your doctor as soon as possible. Upon going to a doctor, he tells you that you probably have a virus, and there's not much to do about it except rest and drink lots of fluids. He tells you that medicines probably will not have much effect on the virus, but to come back if you don't feel better after a while. What are these powerful things called viruses? Viruses are considered neither living nor dead. They cannot reproduce on their own, but need a living thing to help them reproduce. We've only begun to understand these complicated organisms in the past 100 years, but they've played a very important role for thousands of years. Prior to the arrival of Europeans to North America, the continent was occupied by a great people known as Native Americans. Over time, Native Americans lost much of their land to European settlers. While it's commonly thought that the majority of Native Americans died in wars, the truth is that most died of exposure to fatal European diseases. Their bodies had no chance to build resistance, and therefore could not fight the diseases. One of the most damaging diseases was smallpox, a virus that attacks the skin, heart, lungs, and liver. In the early 1700s, when the Native American population was approximately 12 million, Europeans introduced smallpox to North America. By the late 1800s, approximately 250,000 Native Americans remained, millions having died as a result of the smallpox virus. Exactly what is a virus? Viruses are tiny particles that have the ability to invade cells. Unlike cells, they cannot take in food or get rid of wastes. Viruses need the help of living cells, called hosts, to reproduce. A virus has two main parts. Inside the virus is a core of hereditary material. This hereditary material is responsible for the production of new viruses. A protein coat protectively surrounds the hereditary material. The protein on the virus's exterior enables it to attach to and enter the cells that it infects. The body recognizes these proteins as foreign and attacks the viruses by producing substances to fight them. Antibodies are proteins produced by the body in response to harmful infections. The protein coat that covers viruses gives them their shape. For example, the AIDS virus has a spherical shape, as does this flu virus. While this tobacco mosaic virus, which attacks tobacco plants, is rod-shaped. Viruses are commonly named for the disease they cause. For example, this rabies virus is named after the rabies disease it causes in animals. And this influenza virus is named after the fluid it induces. The process by which viruses reproduce can be explained by looking at a specific type of virus called a bacteriophage. It only attacks one-celled host microorganisms called bacteria. First, the bacteriophage attaches itself to a cell. Then it injects its hereditary material into the bacterium. This hereditary material takes control of the cell and creates new viruses. The cell then bursts, and hundreds of newly produced viruses go on to infect other cells. This is just one way a virus reproduces. There are many versions of this process, but most active viruses follow the same general pattern. There are scores of viruses that affect human beings. Some viruses, such as measles, influenza, smallpox, and AIDS, devastate human populations. Fortunately, scientists have developed vaccines to help protect us from many of these deadly diseases. You decide. What is a vaccine? A vaccine actually consists of weakened or dead viruses that are injected into the human body. Once there, the vaccine stimulates the immune system to produce antibodies. You've probably received vaccines for diseases like the measles or mumps. These vaccines will hopefully prevent you from contracting these harmful diseases during your lifetime. This teaspoon of soil contains over 2 million microorganisms called bacteria, the most numerous living things on Earth. Bacteria are also referred to as Monerans. Bacteria are very powerful organisms. They have the ability to make us sick with diseases such as strep throat. However, bacteria can also help us by providing us with healthy foods such as cheese and yogurt. Despite their numerous and complex functions, bacteria have a very simple cell structure. You decide. Do bacterial cells have a nucleus? Like most cells, bacteria have cell membranes and cell walls, and they also contain ribosomes. But bacteria do not contain an organized nucleus. They're considered to be more primitive in structure and are called prokaryotic cells. Most bacteria do not make their own food and rely instead on other organisms for their energy. For example, bacteria break down or decompose organisms such as this dead tree to get their food. This is a diagram of a bacterium that lives in the soil. The outer covering of the bacterium is called the capsule. It protects the organism. Inside the capsule are the cell wall and the cell membrane. The cell wall provides support, while the cell membrane controls substances entering and leaving the cell. Inside the bacterium is jelly-like cytoplasm, which fills most of the cell. Floating in the cytoplasm is the hereditary material. The string-like structures on the outside of this bacterium, called flagella, help it move. There are three main shapes of bacteria. You decide. Describe the three bacterial shapes seen here. Spiral-shaped bacteria are called spirilla. Round-shaped bacteria are called cocci. And rod-shaped bacteria are called bacilli. Bacteria are often classified based on their shape. Bacteria probably rely on a wider variety of processes to obtain food and gases than any other group of living things. For example, some bacteria, such as E. coli, which live in human large intestines, are parasites that survive off other living things, while a second group of bacteria are decomposers, breaking down dead organisms, such as this dead tree, to obtain their food. Autotrophs, a third type of bacteria, are so named because they have the ability to create their own food. Bacteria in these mud flats, for example, can make food by using certain non-living substances that contain sulfur and iron. In some cases, bacteria form a relationship with other living things so that both organisms benefit. This is called mutualism, a type of symbiosis. This occurs in cows. Certain kinds of bacteria live in cow intestines and aid in the digestion of food. A very important group of bacteria called nitrogen-fixing bacteria also form a symbiotic relationship with plants, such as these peas. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria turn nitrogen gas, which plants cannot use, into a nitrogen compound that plants can use. You decide. How do bacteria reproduce? Most bacteria reproduce via the process of cell division. In this process, a single bacterial cell divides to make two new cells. This process is also called fission. Some types of bacteria reproduce extremely quickly, doubling in number every 20 minutes. While we usually think of bacteria as causing disease and rot, bacteria can also be extremely helpful. For example, many foods, including dairy products such as cheese and yogurt, are produced with the help of bacteria. A specific bacterium helps break down milk to create yogurt. In addition, bacteria played an important role in making the fuels we use today. Millions of years ago, heat and pressure within the earth transformed the remains of blue-green algae bacteria into the oil-based mixture we use today as oil and gasoline. Believe it or not, bacteria also live inside our bodies, helping to digest food in our intestines and working with our bodies to fight diseases. Chemicals produced by some bacteria have also been used to produce medicines called antibiotics. Antibiotics are extremely helpful in fighting life-threatening infections and diseases. Bacteria are also extremely important in facilities like this one, called a wastewater treatment plant. You've probably seen one in your community. You might not know that when you flush a toilet, waste is sent in pipes to a place like this. This man-made pool is filled with waste. Many different kinds of bacteria, along with other microorganisms, are hard at work, breaking down the waste so that it's manageable. Before the development of treatment plants, wastes were dumped directly into streams and lakes, causing severe damage to the environment. During the past few minutes, we've explored many different characteristics of viruses and Monerans. We studied how viruses survive and reproduce by invading living host cells, and how the body fights viruses by producing natural antibodies. We learned that the effects of viruses can vary, and that vaccines can immunize against many harmful viruses. We also explored the different types of Monerans, commonly known as bacteria, along with their shapes and structures, and some of the different ways bacteria affect our lives. So, the next time you get the flu, eat some yogurt, or walk over a decomposing log, think about the many ways viruses and bacteria affect our lives. You just might look at life a little differently. Fill in the correct word when you hear this tone. Good luck, and let's get started. Number 1. Viruses are compared to other microorganisms. Number 2. Viruses are commonly named after the they cause. Number 3. A coat surrounds viruses. Number 4. Viruses can only reproduce a host cell. Number 5. A consists of weakened or dead viruses injected into the body. Number 6. Bacteria are referred to as Number 7. Bacterial cells do not have an organized Number 8. Bacteria do not need oxygen to survive. Number 9. The outer covering of bacteria is called the and number 10 is the process of a cell dividing to make two new cells.